afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining me at Epic Fox, and we are going to be playing some What a Tanker by Two Fat Lardies. We are swinging on over to the east front, and we got a little bit of a showdown here on this table. And we will be having, of course, the Germans versus the Soviets. The Soviets will have 3 tanks out on the field today. They will have a T-34-85 right here. If we can get it to focus, there we go. Tank number 115. We will have a T-34 number 14, and another T-34 tank number 12. Their opposition, if we swing on over to the other side of the table, we will have a Ferdinand, and that is tank 525, and you can't really see it down there, but he does have a name of Blucher painted on the side of that hull. And we will move over and see the second tank, which is a Panther G, tank number 24. So that is going to be the combatants today. The table is going to be a 6-foot by 5-foot table. You can see a couple of the hills here, one almost directly center camera, the other one is up in the upper left of the camera there. You can see it kind of blocky looking hills. I grabbed what I could to just make some quick hills here. So we have a marshland right here alongside of the center road, and the tanks will probably do their absolute best to try and stay as far away from that as possible, or maybe draw one of their opponents into it. I don't know how they could do that though. We have a rocky outcrop right here, which will be a major obstacle there. And we have a nice little autumn woods here in the table covering the Soviet approach. And yeah, like I said, there's all sorts of these little bushes and debris around the field here, and it will not count as a movement obstruction, but if the tanks can get directly behind one, so if we get a tank right there behind that piece, it will count as a minor obstruction. So that is the tanks. We can go ahead and take a look at the dashboard here. And we have 2 dashboards, of course, for the Germans. We have one for the Panther G right here, number 24, armor 9, strike 9, attributes fast. And the Ferdinand, number 525, is armor 12, strike 12, and it is slow and has the tank destroyer attribute. We'll get into that here in just a moment. Total points for this is 42. The Panther G is worth 19 points. The Ferdinand is worth 23 points. So that totals 42 points. And if we swing on over here, we have the T-34. It's 4142 model. It's number 14. It's worth 13 points. Armor 6, strike 6, and it is fast. T-34 number 12 is armor 6, strike 6, and fast as well, 13 points also. And you can see here I'm using these little colored crystals to represent buttoned, acquired, aimed. I kind of crossed that one out, and loaded. My dashboards, I went to print some out while I was at work in color, and the printer at work wasn't working. So yeah, it froze up for some reason. I imagine at some point today during my day off, it just spit out about 50 copies of What a Tanker dashboard. My boss is wondering what the heck is going on. I kind of smirk to myself when I think of that happening. Anyway, the third tank right here, we have the tank T-34-85, and it is worth 19 points. It is armor 8, strike 8, and it is also fast. So the total point value of the Soviets is 43 points. So it's 43 points to the German 42 points. They have 1 more point than the Germans. And they also have 1 more tank. I don't know if that's really going to help the Soviets here. The hitting power in that Panther and Elephant is just amazing here. So we'll see how it handles. This is going to be my second game of What a Tanker. The first one I did do a battle report for. However, It was a little sloppy here. I had some camera malfunctions, and I did get those straightened out. I had some tripod malfunctions, and I managed to get those straightened out. And yeah, and also just the recording was kind of sloppy, and it also took up way too much time here. I was recording every single roll and talking my way through the process, and it just took a long time. It was a total of 3 tanks. It was 2 Panzer 4Ds versus 1 KV-1 Soviet heavy tank. The KV-1 ended up winning finally, but the first half of it was fun and exciting and maneuvering and, just all sorts of good stuff. And the second half, after one of the Panzer IVs has gotten destroyed, the other, the remaining 2 tanks just kind of sat right next to each other and slugged it out. In reality, I think the Panzer IV probably would have withdrawn and tried to escape at that point, but I kept on going with it just to come to a resolution. And of course, the KV ended up winning. So, and they had the clear advantage in that scenario. Anyway, is KV heavy tank up against a couple, Panzer IV-Ds, which don't really have a lot of armor or a lot of striking power. They were one of the weaker versions of the Panzer IV, and mainly used in the early war, specifically in the invasion of France, etc. So anyway, I'm getting way off track here. The point is this is my second battle report, so I decided to up it up with a little bit more power on both sides here. Although, like I said, I do think the Germans have the advantage in this one. I'm coming to find that it's usually the side with the most hitting power and armor that is going to win. Although I only played one game, and at the same time, to be fair, the KV-1 was a heavy armored tank, so it didn't allow for extreme maneuvering on the Germans' part to outflank them and get behind them, because that heavy armor pretty much limited the effect of any flanking maneuvers that the Germans could make, and didn't really help them out too much. So neither one of the Germans are heavily armored, so it's a good possibility that if the Soviets can get around the side of them, or even better yet behind them, that it will be a completely different ball game here somewhere in Russia, which is where we're at. So we are going to go ahead and get this started. Once again, thank you very much for joining me today, and let's see what happens. So we just went ahead and rolled for initiative here, and the way that works is basically you just roll a d6 for each tank, and then the highest to lowest goes first. Any ties get re-rolled until you have a winner. But for the most part, we can see the Ferdinand drew the 4th spot here. Going first will be the Panther. So the Panther will go first, the Ferdinand will go 4th. Going second will be this T-34 right here in the middle, tank number 14. Going third will be the T-34-85. And going last will be the second T-34, number 5 over here. And tank number 12 is going number 5. So that will be the order. And I'm going to go ahead and activate the Panther. And after I do the activation, I will show you exactly what the activation die mean. Okay, so I went ahead and rolled 5. Oh, I only rolled 5. There's the 6th one, right? And another 2. So the last game, I had this curse of rolling 2s, which is acquiring a target. And you do need 2s to actually acquire and spot a target. However, when you're rolling 4 2s for an activation, that is pretty useless for the most part, unless you're trying to see people through, heavy woods, or, over a large count of obstacles or whatever. Then you'll need extra 2s to acquire that target. However, we don't really need that many 2s. So 2s, which he rolled 4 of, is acquiring a target. 5 is a reload, and 3 is to aim. If I would have rolled a 4, it would have been fire. So I would have potentially been able to acquire, aim, fire, and reload if one of those 2 had been a 4. However, none of them were a 4. Now, In the beginning, I did mention that the Panzer IV, sorry guys, the trash man is here right now and he is pulling off right now. So, in the beginning, I did mention that the Panther is a fast tank, which lets him change any activation die to a movement die. And I think we are going to go ahead and do that. We're going to change one of these 2s to a 1, and that's going to give us 1 movement die activation. We'll slide these over here. I'm going to use this 1 as a movement, of course, because that's what you use 1 for. And that's going to give us 2d6 of movement. And we got only 4 inches of movement here. So 4 inches of movement is how much we're going to be allowed to move him. And you can arc him in a slight curve as long as you're not turning up to, I think, 45. Anything beyond that will require you to sacrifice one of those movement dice. So there he is. And now we have, let's see, we have some 2s left. We have 3 2s left, and he can see that T-34 way up there in the top here. Let's see if we can get a better angle. So straight down here, in between everything, no obstructions to that T-34 right there in the middle. And he is going to acquire that target using one of his 2s, because there's no obstructions. He is unbuttoned. Even on the model, he's unbuttoned, so that's not a problem. He's going to acquire that target, and he's going to use the 3 to aim, which probably won't help him much because that T-34 is going to move anyway, and he doesn't have a 4 to fire this round. So he just has 2 acquire dice and a reload dice left, which he can't use. So that's going to be the end of his turn, but he is acquired on that middle T-34 there. And now it is actually this T-34's turn to activate here. So we are going to go ahead and roll. And what did we roll? We rolled 2 6s, which are wild dice. We can use those for anything. We rolled 2 moves and 2 3s, which is aiming. So he didn't roll any 2s to acquire, but he can turn one of those or both of those 6s into whatever dice he wishes. So what we're going to do is we are going to use, do we want to, let me think about it. Does he want to shoot first and then move? Or does he want to move and then shoot? I think he wants to shoot and then move. So we're going to turn one of these 6s into a 4. There we go, and that's going to allow us to fire, and we're going to turn one of the other 6 into a 2. And that is going to let us acquire. So we are going to acquire him, and that's tank number 114, which is this sheet right here. So we'll move that green die over to green gem over to acquired. And we are going to use both of these 3s. We're going to use the extra one to get a bonus here to aim, and we're going to switch them up to aimed, and then we are going to use the 4 to fire, and that's going to give him 2 1s left to move. But first we're going to go ahead and do the fire. Now there is no obstructions, and short range is within 48 inches. Let's see if it is within 48 inches, and it is not. It's actually 49, 50. It's actually about 50 inches. I know that might have been a little wobbly there, but it doesn't matter because it was well over the 48 inches. So we require a 7 and up to hit at long range, and there is no obstruction, so it stays a 7 flat. But he used an extra aim die, so it'll get a +1 to the die roll. So it's a 6 up to hit on 2d6. And we rolled a 6, so that will hit the Panther G, and he gets 6 strike dice, and 5s are normal hits, 6 are critical hits. Let's see, what did we roll? We rolled 1 5. We got a 1 normal hit, actually 2 normal hits, 2 5s. No, that one flipped, oh my bad. So we got 1 normal hit. And the Panther has an armor of 9. So we get to roll 9d6 and save on 5 or 6. Now we need to save twice because we need to get over the amount of hits. And equal to, there still might be a repercussion. At minimum, the Panther will pull back and reverse, and at most it'll get a temporary damage. So he needs to save at least 2. That one's cocked. And out of 9 dice, he only rolled 1 5. So he only saved 1. That was a horrible roll. And now the attacker rolls 1d6, and on a 1 through 5, he'll retreat that many inches in reverse, and on a 6, he'll take 1 temporary damage. And we rolled a 5, so he's going to retreat 5 inches. We can go ahead and come over here. And I should have taken that 1 off to show that he is done with his turn. And he's going to reverse 5 inches to there. The Panther is scared of the T-34, and now he is going to lose. I don't know what happened to my gemstones here. I was looking for the bag between clips, and I couldn't find them. So I'll find them eventually, and then we'll start using the gems again instead of the dice over here on the Germans. Anyway, he moved, so you know what? He doesn't lose his acquisition because he still has line of sight. If he was aimed, he would have lost his move. He would have lost his aim, but he didn't. So he's still all good there. He didn't lose his acquisition. And that will almost consist of this T-34's turn. This T-34, remember, he did roll 2 1s, so that will give him 4d6 of movement dice. And we are going to go ahead and roll them, all 4d6. And we got 17 inches here. So 17 inches should be plenty to get back here. And he is right there behind this rocky outcrop. And the Panther, I'm looking here, there is kind of a steep rock here. Let me see if I can get down here to a good angle. So the Panther is directly almost on the other side of this peak right here. I'm trying to determine whether or not he can still see from way up there on that table edge. I'm going to say no, he's now out of sight. So that's going to take care of his turn, and now we go to tank number 3, which is the T-34-85. I'll be right back. Okay, so you can see right here, the T-34-85 rolled 2 2s, 2 5s, and 2 6s. Now, the 6s, as we know, they can be turned into anything, so that's not a concern here. The 5s are reloads, which he's already loaded. Every tank starts off loaded. And he got 2 2s, which is acquisitions. So he is a fast tank, which means he can turn any dice into a movement dice. He's going to need 2 acquisitions to acquire that target. You know what? No, he actually won't, because he'll be uphill quite a ways. He should be okay once he gets up there. But anyway, we're still going to use 1 of those 5s and do a reload. And let's see if that's good enough to get him up that hill here. Let me get this out of the way. Is that going to be good enough to get him up that hill? That was a 6. Rolled a 6 and a 4. This is why we use dice trays, folks. 10 inches. 10 inches straight forward. Will get him up on top of that hill. So if we go over here, T-34, it's kind of hard to see that elevation, but he is a couple inches up above, and the T-34, or the Panther, is way up top there. So let me check. and there is no obstruction. At eye level, he can see perfectly without that marsh obstructing his view. So he only has to use one of those twos to acquire, even though I did bring along a second just in case he needed it. He actually only needs the one to acquire, and I just found my gemstones. They were right in plain sight. So he has now acquired the Panther. He does not have an aim, but he does have a single 6, so he will turn that into a 3, and that will allow him to aim. So now he's aimed, and now he's going to turn the other 6 into a 4, which is going to let him shoot. And then he has a 5 left, so he'll be able to reload after this. And he's going to go ahead and shoot here. So I'm going to roll. I can't roll on right there because he's on a hill. So let's see. He rolled a 6, and that is going to miss. He needed a 7 or more. Actually, let's check and see because if he's 48 inches, he'll be 6 up at short range, basically point blank range. Oh, he's about a ½ inch out of short range. So that is going to be a miss. He needed a 7, and he rolled a 6. So he missed, but he's going to use his 5 to reload. And now he's reloaded. And now we are going to swing on over to the elephant, I believe. Okay, I just rolled the activation for the Ferdinand. I just called it elephant. The difference is the Ferdinands did not have a machine gun on the front of the hole there. The elephants did. Originally, during their debut battle in Kursk, they did not have the machine gun. They were the Ferdinands. And they were quite adept at taking out enemy armor, however, very vulnerable to enemy infantry counterattacks and rushes, which is why they were all recalled after that and given machine guns. So anyway, our activation roll, we rolled 2 6s, which are wild dice. We rolled a 4, a 3, a 1, and a 2. So we rolled a very healthy mix of activation die right there. Now it is a slow tank, which means it can never use more than 2 1s to move in any turn. So that doesn't matter here because he only rolled 1, and he is going to go ahead and move at this point. And we rolled a 7. So where does he want to go? He can try and go hold down. There's a hill right here. He'd get behind it and go hold down in preparation of, or he could stay downhill right here waiting for that T-34 to come across. But I think it would probably be more prudent for him to get over here. And that 7 inches would put him just about hold down, but since he's using a little bit of that movement to turn, I'm only going to give him 6 inches. So 6 inches. And he is not in position as of yet. And he does have a wild die that he can use. He has 2 wild dice actually. So he's going to use one of those 6s as a 1. And he's going to get another 4 inches of movement. So he's going to go hold down right here. And he is unbuttoned, so he has a 180 field of view at this point. So he can see that tank. He does have a 2. I'm going to say, well, he is uphill, but he's hold down, but he'd still be able to see over that hill. I'm going to say he only needs 1 activation die to see that T-34-85 up there on top of that hill. And it is within a 60-degree fire arc, so he will be able to do this. So he is going to use his 2 to acquire the target. He's acquired. He's going to use his 3 to aim. He's aimed. And he has a 4 and a 6 left. So he's going to use the 4 to fire. And let's see if we already determined that there is no obstruction. So let's see if he's within short or long range here. There we go. And he is at 49 inches. So he's 1 inch out of short range. So he's going to need a 7 or up to hit. He could change that 6 into another aim dice, but he wants to be able to use that as a 5 and reload after this shot. So that's a 4, so that is a whiff. He misses with that shot, and he's going to use that 5 to reload. So he's reloaded, but he is aimed and acquired as well. He's going to remain unbuttoned at this point. So I didn't go over that, buttoning up and unbuttoning. A tank can button up or unbutton at the end of its own activation, but before the next tank moves or activates. So this would now be the time he could button up, but he's going to remain unbuttoned, and that will allow him to see better and acquire targets more easily at this point. He's hull down against the Soviets, unless this one on the far left, the German right, Soviet left up here in the top corner, unless he can curve around this way towards that tape measure and get a side shot in, he will be hitting a side armor and also ignoring that hold down position. So that's probably what he's going to do, and his turn is next. So let's see what he rolls. Alright, so he rolled 2 1s, a 2, a 3, a 4, and a 5. That's not a bad roll, actually. So he is going to use both of these 1s to move. He's also going to turn this 5 into a 1. He's going to turn his reload dice into a 1, and that's going to give him a total of 6d6 of movement. What he's going to try and do is just smash the throttle, see if he can get around side that Ferdinand right now, take him out with a shot. He can acquire and aim and shoot as long as he can get far enough to where that tank's not hold down on him. So let's see what he came up with. That is a very poor movement roll. We got 2. So you got 14 inches of movement off of 6d6. That was horrible. I don't know if that's going to be enough. 14 inches is going to put him right there. So if we swing this around here real quick, let's take a shot at where he's looking at. So that tank is still hold down on him. Unfortunately, he only has 1 2 to acquire the target, and that's not enough. And because that's a minor obstruction, he would need at least 2 to acquire that target, and he does not have 2 2s. He only had 1. So that's going to be the end of his turn, and that is all the tanks here. So as we look around what's happening here, we will take a look at the Germans first. The Elephant, or the Ferdinand, as you know, managed to swing its way up right into this little crook on the hill and got itself a nice hold down position from about straight out in front all the way over. He's hold down, but this T-34 over there, as you know, is trying to swing down this way as quickly as possible. Maybe right about where that tape measure is at, he'll have a nice non-obstructed field of view there where he can pling away right into the side armor as well. The Panther was just pretty much sitting tight, taking its time moving forward. Took a shot at that T-34 up here before it went out of the field of view. Oh, that reminds me, he lost his acquisition because we determined he went out of line of sight. So, as you can tell, he's also unloaded because he didn't roll a reload dice. He did get hit by a shot from that same T-34, which must have scared the driver, hit the driver hatch or something. Didn't do any damage, but he reversed 5 inches. He was up here, but he smashed in reverse. Now he's pretty darn close to that board edge there. The T-34-85 got on top of this hill, which you can now see from this angle. Has a pretty high elevation. Excuse me. So he can see pretty much both of the enemy tanks. However, that means he can also be seen. And he's kind of in a bad spot here because he has no obstruction. So we may see him next turn just reverse about an inch or so and get into a hold down position. But then he will, of course, be facing some obstruction from this marshland of the Panther and also that hill to the Ferdinand up there. So yeah, and we already looked at him. He popped a quick shot off and then ran behind those rocks. And that's the end of turn 1. I will probably go ahead and play out all of turn 2 and then get back here and show you what happened. All right, end of turn number 2. I thought the Soviets had something going for them. So the first tank up was tank number 112, which you can see is now in a plume of smoke. He was back here trying to outflank the Ferdinand. He ran up. I think he used 2 movement dice, got a really good roll, got within a good field of view there, but I forgot on his way up there, he didn't see these bushes here, so those required an extra 2 for acquisition. Was no big deal because he rolled 2 2s. He did acquire, he shot, and he hit and did absolutely nothing. It bounced right off the front of the Ferdinand's armor, or excuse me, off the side of his armor. He did get a side shot in on him. But then it was, after that, it was this T-34's turn, and he rode up into the rocks, used up 3 movement dice to get in there, aimed and acquired and fired, and missed the Panther G sitting up there. And then it was the Ferdinand's turn to go number 3. He just did a simple reverse move, reversed on spot here, aimed and shot, and he rolled 1 temporary damage and 2 critical damage, and none of it was saved by the T-34, which in turn blew it up. So that T-34 is brewed up and burning, and the Ferdinand got himself a kill ring on turn number 2 with its second shot of the game. After that, it was the Panther's turn, and the Panther moved up and rotated its turret and took a shot at the T-34-85, which is now hull down here. He directly hit the front of the tank and caused 1 permanent damage and 1 temporary damage. That temporary damage can be removed with a roll of a 6 on a command dice, but from now on, as of right now, the T-34-85 is only rolling 4 dice for activation, and that 6 can never be removed, so at most he'll only ever have 5 dice to activate from here on out. He did, on his turn, he backed up and buttoned up. That turret's a little bit off. He was aimed at the Panther, and he aimed. He did not have fire, so he could not fire, but he is buttoned up. Everybody who's still alive at this point is buttoned up, and yeah, that's about it. So back to the Panther. The Panther lost its aim because the T-34 reversed and went hull down on him, so he's going to have to re-aim, and he did not have a 5 to reload, so he's unloaded and unaimed, but he still has him acquired, and he is buttoned up. The Elephant is not acquired, not aimed, because he just destroyed his target, but he is loaded. He's buttoned and loaded and ready to go ahead and continue this. So that was the end of turn 2. That's where we're looking at. The Panther sitting right there. The Ferdinand. The burning tank. The Soviets in the rock. Sounds like a rock song. And the T-34-85 up there, hold down on the hill. So, that is where we're looking at the end of turn 2. We'll be back after the end of turn 3. Okay, end of turn 3. The Ferdinand, I keep on saying elephant. The Ferdinand just kind of crept around this hill here, got into a nice hold down position from the T-34-85, which is up there on that hill, and the T-34 over here in these rocks. So he was unable to acquire or aim on the T-34-85 in the rocks, or excuse me, the T-34 in the rocks, which is pretty much his target at this point. But he needs to spot him first to do anything. The second tank to go was that T-34, and he just aimed and acquired on him. He was already acquired on him. He aimed because he was already aimed because the Panther hadn't moved yet. The Panther went third, and he shot and did absolutely nothing to the Panther. So the third tank to go was the Panther, and he swung from here up to here to kind of get a little bit of concealment from the T-34-85 up on the hill over there. He aimed and acquired the target, the T-34 in the rocks. He acquired him, but he was unable to aim. However, he was able to get reloaded in the meantime, so all he needs to do now is get an aim shot in there, and he'll be able to shoot. So they're kind of ignoring the T-34-85 at this point. The T-34-85 went fourth, and he was able to, what did he do? Nothing, because he was unloaded. Or did he get a shot in? Yes, excuse me, he did get a shot in. He got a shot in on the Panther and hit it. The Panther saved, and no damage was done, and he was unable to reload at that point. So he still has he didn't roll any sixes on the on the 4 dice that he had, so he still has that temporary damage done. So that's the end of turn 3 here, and just slight adjustments basically on both sides' part. They're getting into good firing positions, or what they feel is good firing positions, and they're just kind of having a mid-range slugging match. Mid-range in terms of this game. In real life, this is point blank firing. But I like that. With 15 millimeter, the 48-inch short range rule kind of gives it a realistic flavor to it in terms of range. That's 48 inches and 15 millimeter. If you were looking at it as true scale, it would probably be about 80 to 90 yards. 48 inches would probably be somewhere around there, 80 to 90 yards. And point blank range truly was, anything depending on the tank, but, point blank usually about 100 yards, 150 yards could be considered point blank range. So 15 millimeter scale works pretty good if you keep the ranges and measurements all the same. Keep them in inches, don't really change it. I think the movement speeds make sense, and the ranges make sense. That is, if you're able to use, a 6x4, 6x5 table. I'm using a 6x5 table, so shooting from corner to corner, I think the ranges work very well if you keep them in inches. Anyway, that's the end of turn 3. We'll be right back. All right, end of turn 4. The first tank up was the T-34-85. He couldn't do anything, actually. The only thing he could do was load, and he was already acquired on the Panther, and he didn't get an aim dice. So, yeah, that's it, pretty much. That's all he was able to do was get loaded. He was thinking about bouncing out and just going down the hill here, getting out of sight, and then leaving the map, saving his hide here, but that wouldn't be the Soviet way, would it? Next up was the Panther, and the Panther was originally concentrating on the T-34 up in the rocks there, which you can now see is burning. So the Panther did that, actually. Put a shot right to the front and destroyed him. So I think he had 3 criticals and 1 normal damage on him, and the T-34 only saved 1, if I remember correctly. So after he burned up that tank, he just kind of spun around a little bit and adjusted his turret towards the T-34-85. he is unacquired and unaimed, but he did manage to get reloaded again. So all he needs to do is get that target up. The elephant, what did the elephant do? Oh yes, the elephant went last. After the T-34 was destroyed, he didn't even get a turn. He was supposed to go third, but it moved to the elephant. And the elephant just kind of went up on top of the hill here and is getting sighted in on the T-34-85. He did get acquired and aimed. He shot and he missed. He did not have a dice to reload, so that's where that is. I think that T-34-85 is in a lot of trouble unless he can get a real lucky shot in on one of these tanks real fast. Yeah, and you know what would really help? It would really help if he rolled a 6 on one of his 4 dice, and that way he could remove one of those, or he could remove this 1 point of temporary damage, the one with the 5 on it. So that would help him out a lot. It would give him a 5th dice in activation. Right now he's only rolling 4, which is really hurting him at this point. So yeah, we'll give it another turn 5 coming up. All right, the T-34-85 went first, and he did manage to get aimed, and he fired at the Panther and hit it, and the Panther saved. So no damage to the Panther. So he didn't have any dice to reload, and as you can see, he got another point of permanent damage. So, and both of those permanent damage, I didn't write this down, I didn't mention it the first time, but his movement is really messed up. His hull has been affected twice by the permanent damage, so he's losing a lot of movement speed if and when he does move. He's been sitting still pretty much this whole time against the back of that. The next up was the Panther, and the Panther shot. He got acquired, aimed, and he shot. He missed, and he reloaded. So he's fully in the green there with everything checked off. The elephant was last. Once again, he's been rolling horribly on the initiative. He pulled up on top of the hill, acquired, aimed, and shot, and he did that permanent damage. Hit the T-34-85 and did that 3rd point of permanent damage, or 2nd point of permanent damage, but it also has 1 temporary damage, so 3 damage points. He was unable to reload. He didn't have a 5 to reload, so he's not loaded at this point. But at some point, I forgot to mention, I think it was on the 2nd turn, somebody shot at the Panther and did 1 temporary damage. And he hasn't, I did roll a 6, but I used it to fire in one of the rounds. I think it was the 2nd turn that happened on. Oh, that's right. It was the T-34 and the rocks. He got a lucky shot in, the Panther didn't save, and did 1 temporary damage to it. I completely forgot to mention that. And but he's just been rolling with it ever since then. He hasn't felt like it's utmost urgent situation to remove that temporary damage. He's just sitting tight right where he's at. So yeah, that's the end of the turn at this point. I'm thinking about calling it here. There's really nothing that's going to happen that's going to change this game, I don't think, but we'll play it through at least one more turn. Be right back. All right, that was very quick. Actually, we only had to do 1 activation here. The Ferdinand rolled first on initiative, finally, and took a shot. Rolled double 6s to hit, so he got to add 2 more damage dice to his attack roll. And he did like 4 points of damage or something like that. And yeah, it was 4 points of damage. The T-34-85 saved 1 of them and was destroyed. Because number 1, it was 3 points of damage all at once. And number 2, that gave him a total of 6 points of temporary and permanent damage, so he lost all his activation dice. So even if he wouldn't have received, the instant destroyed roll, the crew would have bailed out on him. So that's it. The Ferdinand got 2 kills in this game. 1 T-34 and 1 T-34-85. The Panther got 1 kill, and neither one of these tanks was even phased. The Ferdinand wasn't even scratched, and the Panther was just rolling around here with 1 temporary point of damage, like he couldn't even care less. So that's it. That's the first battle report of Water Tanker that I'm going to post, although this is my second battle. Like I said, I did record the first one. If you guys really want me to put it up, just let me know. I will. It's not the best quality, but there is a lot more dice rolling in that one, a lot more explanation of the rules and stuff like that. So I think it's about an hour and 40 minutes long. This one will be much shorter, I believe. Anyway, guys, German victory. Appreciate you guys coming to watch and check it out, and we will talk to you later.